celebrating 20 years of possibility.
I'm Kellie Harper, and I believe anything is possible.
Welcome to Anything is Possible. I'm Halloran Hilton Hill. These are great stories about great people whose lives prove that anything is possible. My guest today is the head coach of the Lady Vols, Kellie Harper. Welcome to the broadcast. I have been itching to get to this moment to see you sitting there. As I was telling you as we were preparing to start this, the very first guest that I had on this show 20 years ago was our friend and mentor, Coach Summitt. And to see you sitting here, right, it's just amazing. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you. And obviously tells me a lot about you. If you're going to go, you're going to target somebody as your first guest. You did a great job because obviously, as everyone knows, she was amazing.
Where does your story, though, begin?
I grew up in Sparta, Tennessee, small town. For the sports world, I like to tell people that it was halfway between University of Tennessee and Vanderbilt. My parents my dad was an educator. They played college basketball, and
Both of them?
They did. They both played at Tennessee Tech, and my dad was a coach. I knew from a very early age that I was going to coach basketball.
How did you know that?
Well, he coached me. My dad coached me a little bit, maybe only officially once or twice, but it was such a big part of our life. And I thought that I was going to be a teacher, and I was going to coach high school basketball. I thought that was my path, and that's how I prepped for college, thinking that's what I was going to do.
You know, it's interesting. I want to stop there for just a second and talk about the energy of our parents and what it does to us and what it does for us. My father had a radio show, little bitty radio shows on the weekend, but he would take me with him sometime, and he'd put me on his knee. And sometimes he would let me sign off his radio show. He'd say, "All right, Halloran," or he called me Deke because he was a preacher, and I was his little deacon. So he would say goodbye to the people, and I would say goodbye. And I thought for a long time I was mimicking what I saw him do, and that's why I liked being a communicator or being in broadcasting. But Kellie, you know what I figured out later it was, and I want to see if this rings true for you. My father had a passion for what he did, which created joy. And I loved being in the wake of or around that energy. And I made this subconscious connection that if you do this kind of work, it makes this kind of joy, one, but two, it was something that brought me closer to my father.
I think the very same thing. As you were speaking, I started thinking about the passion that specifically Dad, because he was a coach, how much passion my dad had for the game and for coaching and for teaching. He was also unbelievably hard worker, just one of the hardest workers you'd ever see. And so that's all I knew, that's what I saw. And not only was he passionate about it, I thought he was really good at it.
Right.
And I was learning from him. And I always feel like you want to do something you enjoy. You gravitate to things that do bring you joy. Basketball and coaching did. I saw how much joy it brought him and my family, and I agree with you 100%. I think that's why I chose that path.
So you knew from a little girl, this is what I want to do. This is kind of who I am. It was teaching. It was, what is it about sports, though, that connected with you? Do you like the score? Do you like winning? What is it?
You know, that's changed throughout the years. Early on, I liked winning. I liked the competition but I also liked being really good at something. And that was what I was good at. I liked being good. I practiced hard and worked hard at it. And then the older I get, I realize sports is so much more than the score and the competition. It's giving our young women platforms. It's teaching them things beyond the court, and it's allowing them to grow. And one of the most satisfying things that I get to do as a coach is see our players find success. And it's really cool because they've worked really hard, and I know how hard they've worked, and I love to see them reap those benefits.
I guess you were just with Ray Burrell as she gets picked 9th, going to LA, and seeing the fruition of that. What'd that do for you?
I was so happy for her. You know, she was one of the players that she came in to Tennessee and was probably, I think she was in a class of 5, and was probably the least highest, I don't want to say lowest rank because she was still ranked pretty high, but projection, hers wasn't as high as everybody else. And she is the one now that's the highest draft choice of all of them. And that just shows how hard she's worked, how much she has matured, and how much she has developed since she arrived on campus.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel.
So you're growing up, you've got these parents that were educators and were athletes, you're around your dad, and you know that this is what you want to do. Walk me through the rest of your journey.
Yeah, so I came to Tennessee. I majored in math. Minored
Why
in
math?
Well, I was going to be a math teacher. I loved social studies. I loved some other things, but my dad was a high school principal, and he said, if you want a job, and if you want a teaching job, you got to go to math. Math. Everybody needs math teachers, and so I chose math.
Most of the math people that I've met in my life, what they love about math is, especially if you're not dealing with abstract math, there's an answer.
Yes or no, black or white, 1 or 0, right? I mean, there's no gray, and as a person, I like that. And so I remember my sophomore year coming into Pat and saying, hey, I think I want to try this college coaching thing. And it goes back to what you see as someone's passion. Mm-hmm. You know, you get to see you get to see Pat Summitt every single day. You get to watch her, learn from her and her staff, and you see that joy, and you see the passion. You also see the hard work, which I was okay with. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to try that. And so it didn't change my degree or anything, but it just changed kind of what I was going to try to do once I graduated. When you
told Pat that, what did she say?
We had a couple of conversations about it. I think early on she just wanted to make sure you know what you're getting into, because this is not an easy profession, and it's going to require a lot of travel. You got to be willing and flexible to move around. And so the first one was a little bit, I want to tell you all the ins and outs, not the glamorous part.
Yeah, you can't really, I tell people this all the time, you know you have a passion or a calling for something when the scary stuff doesn't scare you.
Right, and it didn't. It didn't. That's such a good point. Not sure why it didn't at the time, actually, but no. And so then, after the second conversation was, okay, then this is what it needs to look like. And I was very fortunate when I graduated, I had opportunities to jump in. And there's no doubt that being at the University of Tennessee got my foot in the door with coaches.
Now, if I remember correctly, you did some time in the WNBA, though. You were drafted, correctly? I
was drafted. Just so you know, I played 4 whole minutes as a professional athlete. So you do have a former professional athlete sitting right here. Right. 4 whole minutes.
1 minute in the WNBA counts as being in the WNBA. You got 4 of them.
4 of them.
What happened?
So I was actually drafted and played in Cleveland. And they were trimming the roster. They were bringing in some European players who were playing in a league they couldn't get over at the beginning of the year, so they were coming in a little bit late, which is why I was still on the roster, which is why I still have my I got my 4 minutes, and then they brought some people in and I got released.
So you get released. Does that bother you at all because you already had your mind on coaching?
No, it was hard. It's the first time my whole life I've been cut at anything. You know, again, going back to this was something I was good at.
Right.
Something I was good at my whole life. And now you're telling me I'm not good enough. It was really difficult. I tried again the next year. I got on in training camp with the Washington Mystics. I had a couple injuries. They called me in, says, we're gonna go a different direction. We're gonna release you. That time, there was a little bit more peace. I knew that I gave it everything I had. It wasn't meant to be, and I was comfortable hanging up the tennis shoes at that point. It's still hard. I cried, tears, but I understood that it was okay at that point to move on to the next chapter in my life.
You cry?
Oh man, not a lot.
Right.
I'm not the most emotional person, but in those moments, I mean that's hard. Something that you feel like a failure at that point.
What happened next?
So I go down to Auburn. After the first cut, I go down to Auburn, and I'm an administrative assistant. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just there, working and trying to figure out the college life. And so I spent 2 years down there with Hall of Fame coach Joe Champion. It was great. It was great for me to get my foot in the door and start learning. And then I had an opportunity to move to Chattanooga. I was assistant coach there for 3 years. Again, learned under Wes Moore, and really great opportunities for me to grow as a young person in this profession.
And then what?
Then I got my first head coaching job. I was 26 years old as a head coach. I was the youngest head coach in the country. I didn't know what I didn't know, but I got the job at Western Carolina, and the timing and the fit was perfect for me because my administration was in a position to support me, a young coach. I had a great staff that was experienced and could be able to help me navigate through all the things I didn't know. But it was a wonderful 5 years.
Do you mind that people reference Pat, and do you feel any weight coming behind the most legendary coach in the sport?
I think about that a lot.
Is that a fair question?
It is.
Yeah.
I think it's a fair question, and I think it's an accurate assessment of what could happen. But had I not played for her, had I not loved her and adored her and put her on a pedestal, I think it might be too much, or it might irritate me at times, but it doesn't.
Oh,
and
good.
I realize every interview that I'm going to do for the rest of my career, I'm going to talk about Pat, and I'm completely okay with that. I'm more than okay with that. I get why, and I understand why, and we should talk about her, because what's going to hurt me in a few years when we have young prospective student athletes on our campus and they don't know who she is.
Right. What's that statue about, right?
Oh, that's going to be such a difficult thing, and we have murals, we have a statue, we have banners, we have the court. So much of Pat Summitt is in our program, and we see it daily. But I do think it's important that we continue to educate our young people on who she was.
All right, because I want to pay respect to who you are. But when you mention being 26, and I think about her when she started with the Lady Vols, I think she was 22. She said something to me sitting across from me. She said, I never coached a practice, never coached anything. She said, I'd never done any of that. But she said, I'm glad I had the courage to try.
I'm glad she had the courage to try also.
Is this where you also recruited a husband?
So he and I, so we actually met while I was in college.
Right.
But we started working together when I went to Chattanooga. We were both hired as assistant coaches. So we worked together for 3 years in that role. And then when I took the head job, he came with me, and he's been with me ever since. We just finished our 18th year together.
So he works with you now?
He currently works with me as my assistant coach.
Because I know the weeklies did something like that, right?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So obviously we've done it for 18 years. It works for us. I think a couple things. If I went home after a bad practice or a loss, heaven forbid, and my spouse was there and he said, "Oh, honey, it'll be okay," then he doesn't really understand, you know? And so now I don't have that. He goes home just as mad as I am, you know? People often ask, how do you balance the two?
Right.
It's one. It's not two. It's one. You know, for us, it's our life. And, you know, we work hard at what we do. We love what we do with our players on our campus. And, you know, we go home. That doesn't necessarily mean we're still talking about practice, but it might. We might talk about practice when we go home. We don't flip it on and off. It's just when you sign up for this, you're just on. Right.
Children.
We were married for 14 years before we had our first child.
Really?
So we did retirement on the front end. I don't know what I'm gonna look like the grandparent at the college graduation or high school graduation, but they've been the joy. They've been such a joy in our lives.
What are their names and ages?
So Jackson is 8, and he's in 2nd grade, and then Kylie is 3, turning 4 this summer.
The smile that came over your face when I mentioned your kids, what are their interests?
Jackson is, he is this child, he has the most empathy of any human being I know.
Really?
He's really special. He connects with people of all ages. He's very considerate, compassionate. He's very social. He loves to talk, loves to be in front of the camera, all things. He doesn't discriminate between anything. He loves everything. Great. You know, wants to be part of everything. Currently he wants to be a superhero, and that honestly he should probably be Captain America because he's all about fairness and justice and do things right for everybody. Kylie is a Spitfire. She is a controlled aholic. I mean, she wants to be in charge of everything. She likes basketball, she loves dance, she loves gymnastics, she loves her baby dolls, she loves being a mom to her baby dolls, so she's gonna be either a teacher or a bossy human being someday.
Wow, think about that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Think about that. So when you get the call to come to the University of Tennessee, where were you, what was going on? Yeah. You were having success too, but when you get that call, what did you feel? What did you think?
Yeah, you know, going through that process, it was a lot. Obviously, the previous coach was my assistant, Holly Warlick, who I adore and love, and she's the epitome of Lady Vols. And so just kind of navigating that, you know, the feelings that I had, I think was important. And then also where I'm at in my career and who I am as a person, was I ready for this? And the answer was yes. I'm in a really good place because being the head coach at Tennessee, you're not just coaching a team. It's a whole lot more. And if you don't have confidence with who you are, then it could eat you up. You know, the pressure, the noise, the critique of outsiders. So you have to have a lot of confidence with who you are before you take that job. And I was in a really good place. Obviously for us, having children, being in Knoxville put us closer to our family. So we felt like that was a good move. But also the biggest thing is I came here because I felt like we could win another national championship.
Wow. So you come to the University of Tennessee and you're back. I can't imagine what that feeling is like. You go from being a student athlete here at the University of Tennessee to being the head coach. That's gotta be heady stuff.
It is.
It has to be surreal.
You could let those moments take over if you want to, because you can have plenty of them, because it is heavy. And it's not just my alma mater, it's not just where Pat Summitt coached. it's one of the best programs in the nation, if not the. I mean, all eyes on you. Folks in our profession call it the mothership, of women's basketball, the Mecca. It's where you want to be. So all eyes on you, and so every move you make is being looked at. But I've had a few of those moments where I allow it to kind of take over because I think I should. Have those occasionally. Most of the time, I'm a very direct, this is what I've got to do. Here's my task, and I got to get this done. And, I don't let the gravity, the enormousness of this position take over. So for me, I think the first, I had a few when I first got here. And, going out on the football field at the spring game was pretty cool. The one that I always remember was walking out to practice for the first time in Thompson Bowling Arena, walking out and looking around. Nobody was out there yet. I beat everybody out on the court, and just being able to take that moment in. This is my first practice as the head coach of Tennessee. And then everybody came out, and then all right, this is my first drill. So then you're taskmaster, right? But it's big for sure.
All right, I want to, we actually got to do part two. I want to take a break. Part two of this interview, I want to talk about your coaching philosophy, your goals. So we'll do that next time. My guest is Kellie Harper. More next time.